Welcome to our webinar, 5 Keys to Fundraising Success and Your Ministry's Long-Term Growth. This is Paul Martin from Advocacy. Our objective is to build a community of support around a vision. That's your vision. And today, takeaways from our seminar will be our webinar. First, that how shared beliefs of your ministry community are the foundation for success. Secondly, what your ministry staff needs to know to drive financial success. Third, how to transform your support network into a ministry community. And then fourth, how to be more productive and revenue positive from the same workforce and work schedule. And then fifth, how to inspire your leadership to be more active in your ministry's growth program. I'm Paul Martin with Advocacy, and we help grow funding for Christian broadcasters, Christian schools, Bible colleges, missions agencies, and nonprofit organizations that carry the gospel. Today, 5 keys to fundraising success and your ministry's long-term growth. It's a privilege to present this material today. And frankly, I'd like you to remember, if your vision for your nonprofit organization is bigger than your budget, give us a call at Advocacy. That's what we're here for. I'd like to introduce our speakers today. The first speaker on our call will be our first presenter is Randy Bronkema. Randy has over 20 years in development experience. He specializes in leadership, in major gifts, and donor architecture. You're really going to enjoy what Randy has to say today. Jerry Grimes. Jerry also has long experience in development, running two nonprofits, one in the social sector, one in broadcast. He also has had a great opportunity of working at the college level, so is Randy. You'll enjoy what Jerry brings today. Then Will Stevens, who joins us after a long experience on Wall Street, brings a perspective of leadership, of money, and because of his Master's of Divinity degree at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, he brings a scriptural approach that I think you'll find unparalleled. Our moderator for today is Jeff Crabtree. He's a client advocate here at Advocacy. He speaks with nonprofit organizations every day, and he works with large, medium, and small nonprofits so that they can grow income. He has the greatest opportunity of hearing the questions and concerns nonprofits bring, and that's how come we've asked Jeff today to moderate this webinar. Jeff?
Thanks very much, Paul. I really appreciate it. Randy, let me start with you. A number of leaders that I've spoken with, just within the last 45 days or so, are really hoping that their planned on-air fundraisers will help them get off to a really strong start financially. As we know, however, sometimes those plans don't always generate the income they need. As they work to gear up their development plans, what are the foundational elements that they need to get right first?
Thanks, Jeff. A great question. Some of the fundamentals that we need to be working on is, number one, it's all about your why. It's all about your purpose. It's all about your mission. Not your how, not your what. See, the majority of time that we spend as nonprofits is usually on the how. How are we going to do something? And what are we going to do? But we spend very little time in terms of our why. Why are we doing this? It's interesting, Jeff, when you walk through a nonprofit and you ask the receptionists and you ask people in the office, why are you here? Why do you work for this organization? Can you share with me the mission of this organization? It's very interesting, the responses you get and the lack of response you get. See, sometimes organizations start out so quickly with the how and what. But as an organization, we need to define the why, the mission. Why are we doing what we're doing? Remember this, people don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. Next, you need to take a look at what governs your decisions. This is fundamental in everything that we do. What are your governing values? Are you hiring the same people that have the same values as you? Are you working with private contractors and others with shared values? If you decide to work with Advocacy, do we have shared values? Can we work together? These are very important in our decision-making process. And when we make good decisions based upon our governing values, It helps our how and it helps our what, but it definitely affirms our why. And thirdly, forming a vision for the future. If there's one thing that all of us in nonprofit work need to do, is to have a vision for the future, a painted picture for where we want to be. Now, we've heard these stories time and time again, but if we're going to change culture, we have to have a vision. And number four, we have to be united. Unity comes from a shared why. Unity comes from shared governing values, and unity comes through vision. Jeff, let me share with you just a really quick story about unity. 2 years ago, I was down in Kalamazoo, Michigan at the Economic Club, and I was at a table with 6 other people, and the lady sitting next to me was a beautiful young lady in her 30s. Very smart, very articulate, and we had a great discussion together. Found out that she, at that time, was running Planned Parenthood in that area. And she looked at me and she said, "You're an evangelical Christian, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am a Christ follower." And she looked at me with glaring eyes and said this: "You, as evangelical Christians, are the least of our worries. You guys get fired up about something for about 30, maybe 60 days, and you fade away. But I am in this for the long run." That brought chills to me because she was right. Are we really serious about why we're doing ministry? Are we really serious about having a vision? And are we serious about being united together? Think about that as we move forward. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Randy. I can see how not only our mindset, but also our passions with regard to the why really set the stage for how our fundraising efforts are even going to begin. Jerry, continuing our discussion on those things that are foundational for success in our fundraising efforts, would you please share with us some of the important things we need to know before we start?
Well, one of the most important things you can do for your organization is to understand the kinds of people that are already supporting it. And I'm amazed as we work with organizations across the country, Christian radio stations, schools, missions agencies, Bible colleges. The story is often the same. There is a database. It's maintained by somebody else other than the leader, of course, and the leader really doesn't take the time to understand who his own donors are. And we find that knowledge is power, that the more you know about your donors, who they are, why they give, when they started giving, how many donors you attract in a year, how many donors you lose in a year, what some of the communication structures are that retain donors, those are important questions. And what you need to know about your donors is simply a little bit of research. And here at Advocacy, one of the things that we offer, one of the products that we offer is a closer look at your donors data set. We can come in, do some analysis on your donor database, but we can also field some surveys and do some research to find out who your donors are, how we can get more of those same kinds of donors and attract them to your organization. So donor intelligence research is certainly key. We also find that the staff needs to know about donor communications. We find that often staff members are left out in the cold. They don't understand what it is you're trying to do, who you're trying to attract, and the kinds of things that need to take place. We feel that donor communications is key, and we want our staff members to know about it and understand the process. So we come in, train on that, and explain how to get those things done. We also want to make sure that your board knows about donors and who they are, what they all stand for, what they believe, where your major donors are coming from, and this is key to understanding the whole process. So sitting down with the executive leadership, going through the data that exists, gathering new data through research, these are some of the keys to understanding who your donors are, why they give you organization, how we can best retain them.
Having that critical knowledge about our donors, what they really care about, how to engage them deeply, certainly is critical, Jerry. I really appreciate that. Will, let me turn to you for our third key to fundraising success. Help us to understand what type of support we need to build at our ministries to ensure not only a successful funding launch, but also an ongoing productive relationship with our donors.
The starting point is to have the right perspective. It's not uncommon for ministries to think of themselves as existing in this with this us and them perspective, that there are those of us inside the ministry, the workers, the leadership, then there's everybody else on the outside, sort of an us and them mentality. But in fact, the Bible tells us that we are called to live and work in community. That's a community of faith, and a community of work, that is a community of ministry outreach. So great ministries see themselves in this biblical context as part of this larger identity, this identity as community, as a biblical community driven by biblical principles. So let's think about who are the component parts of a ministry community. So it's a community of people. There are three groups that make up this community. First, it's those being served through your ministry, those who are in need of the services, those in need of hearing the gospel, the hungry, the orphans, the lost, the young people who are being trained to be Christian leaders of the future, those being served. The second group is those delivering the services of your ministry, the workers, the staff, the volunteers. They are the ones who are delivering the services of your ministry. And the third group of people are those behind the scenes, those who support the work of your ministry. They're the champions of your cause, they're the donors, they're the ones that provide the fuel for the engine of your ministry. So those three groups are what form the community of your ministry. And great ministries become stronger and greater by focusing on building up this community. How? By connecting these three groups, especially donors, because donors are typically the most disconnected from the work of the ministry. So how does a ministry community then connect donors? Well, I'd say there are three ways. First, you need to bring donors into the experience of shared work, that is, getting them to understand and even participate in the mission of your ministry, the hands-on experience of the good work that your ministry does. Even board members should be involved in the work of your ministry once in a while. Second, it's what Randy talked about. It's that shared vision. Everyone in the community, especially donors, need to understand your vision and to share it because they want to have a passion about helping you get there, that making sure that they're committed to the impact that your ministry can make, not just today, but 5 years from now. So having that shared vision is vital to building community. And last is it needs to be a sense of shared support. That is that everyone is responsible for fundraising. It's not someone's job in the development office. Everyone is responsible for fundraising. So because it's a shared responsibility, everyone needs to be committed toward dedicating their resources, their time and talents toward raising support for the ministry. So if we can connect these groups, and especially donors, to the work, to the vision, and the support, we have a great start to building community. So what are some practical ways of actually putting this in motion and getting donors more connected, drawing them closer to your ministry? A few suggestions. First, effective, passionate communications. Is your ministry communicating its vision in a style that's personal, it's passionate, inspiring, and also it's timely, that the message is going out there all the time and constantly reinforcing the passion you have for your work. So effective communications is one. Second, how do you bring people together? Well, how about bringing them together physically? How can you bring them together? By organizing events that link this entire community, both the workers, the supporters, and those being served. Connecting leadership with the board, with the donors. So some sort of set of events that create a sense of physical bonding and community and relationship. Another way of connecting people is through the work of the ministry. We talked about this. Get everyone involved in some aspect of work, even if it's once a year, once a quarter. Have everyone participate in some kind of ministry-wide work project. Fourth, one item that's sometimes overlooked is prayer. Everyone should be committed to praying for the ministry. That can be done collectively. Prayer meetings and prayer gatherings are an excellent way to build community. Okay, remember, this is a community of faith. And finally, fundraising. We've already said that everyone is a fundraiser. So therefore, the ministry should be in charge of organizing community-wide fundraising activities. Give everyone a job, give everyone a responsibility to participate in fundraising in one aspect or another. Everyone can participate in that, and that shared experience of success in fundraising can really cement the fabric of a community. So when your ministry begins to think of itself as community, when it works together as a community, when it prays together, and when everyone shares in the vision in a tangible way by support, that's when you're on your way to being a really great ministry.
I really like that, Will. Just like the community we have at our own churches being a strong source of support and encouragement for us personally, I can see how surrounding our ministries with those who have a shared vision really empowers our organizations in their fundraising efforts. Thanks very much, Will. Let me come back to you, Jerry. Please give us an idea of the types of back-end system preparation needs that have to be done for our ministries in order to make sure we'll be able to run our financial supports efforts effectively.
I think one of the things that Will really emphasized very well is the need to build a true community around your mission. And that is just not going to take place if you don't have a good marketing system. I find that a lot of times if you talk to the executive director of an organization, and then as Randy suggested, you go down and you talk to maybe somebody working the front desk or a volunteer, they have a really hard time articulating the same mission for the organization. I'm not talking about the mission statement, which is on the wall and sometimes becomes like wallpaper. We just sort of see it and we don't really apply it. I'm talking about how would each person communicate the heartbeat of the organization. Once you have that message down, what you want to say about your organization consistently, you should begin to build structures in the community that get that message out there so that everybody can articulate it all the way down to the person who's loading boxes in the storeroom and all the way up to the somebody on the board. We're all saying the same things about the organization. It's also important to pay attention to how you say what you say about yourself. And by that I mean finding your voice. Your organization advocates for others, or your organization does good work to help other people. How should you present that message? What characteristics describe who you are? And being consistent in delivering that message. It's the how of saying your mission that we want to care about and focus on. Do you want to demonstrate, and I'm sure you do, that you're compassionate? Do you want to follow biblical ethics? Do you want to try to always encourage other people with your message? Those are things you can think about in terms of finding your voice. Branding. Your website and your social media sites will never work together unless the branding of those elements is consistent. People need to see, whether it's on Facebook or on Twitter or some other place on the web, they need to see the same message, the same branding everywhere, and it needs to be across your website. It's so important that you take a look at the branding elements and get some help where you need them. Branding extends also to fundraising letters. There is a certain way you present yourself and a certain attitude you have, a certain examples that you give. It's very important that you continue the branding throughout all aspects of your communication system. And then to the development system itself, we talked a little bit about donor intelligence. That is very important. What kind of records are you keeping? How do you know who your donors are? Do you understand their giving habits? You need to measure and track everything that relates to how you communicate with donors. Otherwise, how do you know what worked and what didn't work? And this is particularly true of your annual fund. A lot of times people will send out letters one year, not really measure the results, and then they don't know whether it's time to send that same kind of letter out again or whether something else would work because there's no measurement in place. You cannot achieve what you cannot measure and what you do not measure, and I think that's so important. I also believe that a good donor system should have a major gifts component. How can we find out who the people are that are giving at a higher level or have the capacity to give? And what is our effort going to be to engage those people? Not just send them letters and not just invite them to events, but to begin to cultivate relationships with each one of them and steward the relationships God has given us carefully so that we can produce more income for the kingdom. And finally, planned giving, one of the most overlooked areas of development today, but one of the areas that can produce the greatest results. This is simply sitting down with donors and a financial advisor and offering them an opportunity to include your organization in their estate plan or help them out with a will or a lead trust or a charitable gift annuity that benefits you and helps them with possibly income today or tax savings at a later date. Those are important things. We need to understand them, we need to apply them, and we need to have an approach to them. The baby boomer generation is peaking right now in its retirement years, and for the next 10 years or so, there's just a great opportunity for nonprofits in the planned giving arena. And then I would also say it's very important to have an accurate reporting system. We walk into organizations a lot and we find that the donor records are being kept in Access or Excel. Those are very fine Microsoft products, but they are not capable of capturing the kinds of data that you need to have kept to or really understand who your donors are and what they're giving. You do not have to spend a lot of money on a data reporting system. There are systems out there for as little as $60 to $80 a month, or there are even some free systems out there depending on the size of your database. And it's important to get committed to a system, to understand it, to train on it, and to use it to its fullest capabilities. That will really help your organization grow. I also think it's important that you begin to track not just mailings that you send out and not just giving habits of donors, but also that you track activities and results. It's important to know when you have an event who comes to the event and who didn't, and you can understand better what kinds of things interest that particular donor by pulling reports of who attended what event, and you'll know who to invite next time. Taking the records keeping to the next level is so important because it helps you better understand your donors and what will work.
I love that, Jerry. It's so much like how Scripture tells us the body works together. Just all those different parts have to be included. They have to be working right, and they've got to be going toward the same goal. Randy, okay, let's say that I have my why in place, and I'm beginning to become more knowledgeable about my existing and prospective donors. We've got a strong community in place, and my marketing and development systems are set up. What is it going to take to actually drive my whole development effort forward?
Thanks, Jeff. Great question. Great leaders build great people toward a great vision. Let me repeat that. Great leaders build great people toward a great vision. There are 3 steps in that quote. The first step is great leaders. Leaders must have a passion for what you do. It has to start with you. Does your ministry why wake you up sometimes at night? Does it stir you? Remember, missions are not something we create. Missions are something we discover, Jeff. We discover them. And they fill us with passion, and they drive us to complete it. Number 1, leaders must have a passion for your why, for your mission and your purpose. And number 2, great leaders must have a passion to grow. Let me ask you something as a leader. And by the way, anybody who's been called to Christ, has asked Christ to become your personal Lord and Savior, I believe you're a leader. because leaders are simply influencers. So, are you growing so you can influence more? See, you cannot create great people unless you're growing. Dr. John Maxwell said in the 21 Laws of Leadership, it's the law of the lid. People under your administration will never grow any more than you. Never. So if you're not learning and growing, your people aren't learning and growing. So you must have a passion for your why, for your mission, and you must have a passion to grow. Next, leaders must be equippers of your people. I am amazed at how much of our work is done in the how and what. That we are really not sitting down and saying to our people, how are you growing? How are you developing? Our churches are losing membership. Are they really growing? Our nonprofits, do we have all the influence we have? Are our people growing? Great leaders can't build a great vision without great people. You can't do it. There's no such thing as a person who makes it on their own. That's not the way God designed it. He designed it with unity in mind, and He designed it for us to move forward together. So great leaders must build great people. How are you building great people? What's your plan? How are you investing in lives? And to train that even amongst our people. When somebody answers the phone, they have the ability at that point to add value into somebody's life. It could be a donor, a friend, or a troubled person. We have the value to be equippers, not to ridicule people, not to make fun of people, not what the world sees from us as Christians. We need to change that. We need to be equippers. And great leaders build great people. Great leaders are equippers. And lastly, leadership must be a grand dream. To be bold in moving the ministry forward. It must be bold. It must be bold in a powerful way. As Jesus said, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded of you. Everything. I'm going to stop here, Jeff, but I want to share just a really quick story that deeply moved me. And even my colleagues haven't heard this story yet. I was at a family forum council meeting, and a gentleman from a neighboring state was talking about the gay marriage law in a particular state that was coming up for vote. And this gentleman, an African-American gentleman, was talking about his state and how they had lost. Now, we're all familiar with the story that Hitler and the Nazi regime went to all the churches, went to the main churches of Germany and said, listen, you can teach whatever you want, and you can meet whenever you want. But we have one requirement. Do not badmouth the Third Reich. And 98% of the churches agreed to that statement. Well, the rest is history. Now back to our current culture. Fact is, a couple of weeks ago, this gentleman was sharing from us, and he said, we knew we were 1 or 2 votes from this thing going either way. And he said, the governor of that state went to 6 prominent churches and said to them, listen, not asking you to support it, not asking you to be against it. But we can help with some building permits. We can help with some other issues that you might be facing in some of your expansion campaigns. Those can go away if you're just not vocal on this issue whatsoever. Guess what? Those 6 to 7 churches basically agreed, and the law passed. We're in a new era in our nation and in our culture for a new brand of leader that is bold. I hope and I pray that this webinar not only gives you great information, but I hope it encourages you to be bold as you've never been bold before. This is a new era, and we need leaders who will stand strong to be a great leader. that is not afraid to build great people, and who's not afraid to dream a great dream.
And thank you so much
Thanks,
for
Jeff.
sharing about the leadership, Randy. In fact, thank you all for these 5 keys to fundraising success and your ministry's long-term growth. It was excellent information. Paul, let me turn today's discussion back over to you.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen, and I appreciate the presentations today, the conversation. And if you would like to contact each one of these speakers, please feel free. Their email addresses and phone numbers are on your screen right now. So give a call to Will, Jerry, Randy, or Jeff to talk through any of the material that you've heard today, or perhaps if you just want to go a little deeper and talk about, we're here to help. There'll be no charge for that call. We'll very much look forward to serving you. A couple of other things that you may find helpful in your journey on development and leadership. One is our blogs at www.advocacy.com. When you click on Latest Thinking at the top of the page, you're able to jump into the blogging area. You'll see a list of blogs, a large list of blogs, that cover a number of different perspectives, camera angles on development. If you'd like to search on, let's say, major gifts, it's a good idea to go to the little white blank in the top and just type in major gift and hit the search button, and you'll have a whole list of blogs about the topic. It'll probably give you some ideas on how to gain traction on your major gift goals. In addition to that, we invite you, if you would, to like us on Facebook. Go out to facebook.com/advocacy, A-D-V as in Victor, O-C-A-C-E as in Edward, and give us a like there. I think you'll enjoy the material that you get off of Advocacy's Facebook presence.